In this video, I'm going to tell you my favorite light hiking waterproof boots from Keen, the Targhee 2s. These have been very serviceable for me. I'm going to give a few of the highlights of the boots and at the end of the video, a few of the downsides and lowlights so you know what you're getting into when you're looking at light hiking boots. So the first thing I really like about these boots is, well, they are light. How light are they? Well, let me fire up the scale and I'll show you right now. And the scale is going to say, all right, hold. The scale says these boots are 1 pound 3 ounces or 554 grams. So just a tiny bit over 1 pound for a pair of shoes, or 1 pound per shoe. Now compare that to my Merrell Moab ventilator that I've been using for a lot of years. Let me measure that. Now I always thought these were really light hiking boots, but come to find out, the Merrell Moab ventilators are 1 pound 4 ounces. So just a tiny bit heavier, or for my grams friends, 570 grams. So first, why did I transfer from the Merrell Moab ventilators over to the Keen Targhee 2s? Well, one of the big problems I had was a lot of hiking. I've been up in moist circumstances and everything's getting wet, or had to do a light creek crossing. And once these got wet, they'd stay soaked forever. Now, when it was really hot in summer in July and August, I could totally tolerate that. That was a really nice thing about these. They were totally breathable compared to the Keens. The Keens are waterproof, and even though it's good, they have some downsides, as I said. But I transferred from these because I got sick of the fine dust particulates filtering through my boots, getting my toes completely black, and then they start rubbing and developing blisters. I don't have that with the Keens, so that's a huge advantage of these waterproof boots, is they actually prevent the dust and grit from going through and causing my feet to get all dirty and then causing rubs. So whereas some of the nice parts about this boot is that it's got a nubuck leather upper, which is really nice compared to more of the suede style. So this tends to take a beating. Now, a bit better. Now these boots are brand new, literally out of the box here. I just got these boots from the local store, and that's why I wanted to show you what they look like right out of the box. Now you'll notice they actually do have a few scuff marks right out of the box, like here, and I'm like, oh, that's terrible. I'm like, look, I'm gonna be hiking over rocks and shrubs. I actually don't know why they don't come in perfectly out of the box. It is kind of strange for me for the $100+ boots. I'll put a link below to them, but just know that every pair that I've gotten out of these, I think this is my third pair, yeah. Yeah, and I'll tell you how far I've walked in that in a minute. But the third pair of these, they always come out just a little bit scuffed up, and it's more of a natural look. It's not a whole grain leather, it's a nubuck style leather, so you know, whatever the case is. But if you look at the lacing style here, the laces are really nice. They tend to, once the laces break in a bit, they tend to stay pretty snug. But you can also see on the laces, they're not perfectly smooth. They have a little bit of ripple to them, and that helps prevent them from coming unlaced. I also always double knot my boots, so that really helps me. It's just a thing I've gotten in the habit of. If you look on the bottom lugs here, they say they have 4mm lugs on the bottom, and I've been very happy with the traction pattern on these boots thus far. Really haven't suffered too many slips. Of course, all rubber boots aren't great when you're on slick rock and when it's wet. And you can see the side lugs are supposed to give you really good traction on the side as well. You can see the heel boot pattern. It's not crazy deep like my heavy Vask hiker boots, but for light hikers, for mid-height hikers, I've been very happy with them. Now, most of the boot is leather, but they have this synthetic fabric, some sort of variation of nylon on here, and they have this Keen ultra dry or water stopping fabric on the inside that's really supposed to stop the water from getting in. And I have to attest, I've walked through quite a few creeks, splashing up to about mid-height on the boot, and no problem. Now, ultimately, at the end, I'll explain what happens over time on these boots. but for that, it's pretty good. The nice thing too about these is that they've got this lock here that's built in so that you can lace up your ankles, compared to the steel on here. That the steel lasts infinitely long, but on the Merrell boots, I've actually had these little tie downs tear out before, so that was a real bummer. I have yet to have anything tear out on this boot, but we'll see. You can see also too that the toe cap is very nice and covered all the way around. So if you walk through and kick rocks or something, that's really not much of a problem. You can see here too that the foam is pretty solid on the boot, and the traction pattern, it's good and sticky. And you can see that these are brand new because they have this nice little alligator stipple pattern, whatever that is. Also in the arch of the boot, it has some pretty hard plastic here too. If you're like me, where sometimes you like to rest your arch and step on a log or a little branch, that's a real nice support. Now, this boot has a pretty good nylon shank in it. When I flex the boot, you can see that the shank runs about two-thirds of the boot length here. Let me see how far that is. So if my boot's an 11.5 and it's a 13-inch, and the shank ends there, it's about 9 inches. So 2/3 to 3/4, there's a nylon shank. So this boot is actually, for a light hiker, quite stiff, which is really nice. Now I'm also a wide-footed person, so you can see that these are 11.5 wide for me. Now my foot's actually 10.5, so even though these are wide, they're not quite wide enough, but I've worn them really big and they seem to be fine. Also, these Keens tend to run a bit small, so if you wear a 10.5 and you order a 10.5, it's probably going to be too small for you, so I would definitely consider sizing up there. The liner, or the insole of the boot, is a Keen sort of EVA molded foam, whatever it is, and it's actually pretty nice compared to, say, my Merrells. My Merrells have a little bit height on them, maybe, I don't know. I found the Merrell liners were okay, but I found the Keen liners were a little bit better. However, what I do in my Keens is I actually use, I can get it out here, I actually use Superfeet in the Keens, and I've used these forever because they're really expensive and I just keep reusing them, so I'll put a link below to the green Superfeet. Been highly impressed with those. So the boots are quite comfortable to use. I've used them on how far? Just about 500 miles on these boots. Now, let me show you what's happened to the boots after 500 miles. You can see on the bottom here, I've used some shoe goo, because what happens is these outer lugs over time, probably about 350 miles, start to tear from the foam. Now, interestingly, the lugs and the foam don't separate. Instead, the foam actually tears with the lug, and a tiny bit of the foam goes with the lug. Why that happens, I don't know. So that is the primary defect that I've found on these boots, is that over time, these side lugs, though they're super nice, they actually tend to tear out. Now, would I call that a defect? No, because you can see the wear pattern. I've literally worn through the lugs, and I've completely worn out the back outer edge because I'm over or under pronating. I can't remember which. So you can see what happens, but you can see the nylon shank is still pretty good. Now the leather has been in the Oregon rain for crazy long, and I do my best with my open-offs, and I'll put a link below to my other waterproofing and leather treatment video, but you can see this is what about 500 miles on this boot looks like. Really, it's not too bad, and the only reason that I'm replacing him is I've worn through the outer edge, which has caused me to start walking a bit sideways, and it's hurting my feet. And you'll notice this crack in the foam is pretty recent. It just happened, and it might have been from the shoe goo, because the other boot, yeah, that's the thing. Even though the shoe goo keeps the lug attached to the outside of the boot, for some reason that shoe goo actually seems to almost damage the foam. I can't quite verify that, but I used the shoe goo and the PVA or PVC glue to try and keep these outside lugs on, but it actually potentially damaged the foam. But you can see here what these boots will look like. Now, this is the other big defect that you'll have over time, is that toe cap will begin separating from the leather, and you can see it here. Now, do I say this is a defect? Arguably not really. I mean, over time I would expect these guys, because they were in the Oregon rain, to, it's just naturally going to happen because that rubber is going to separate from the nubuck. But as you can see on this toe cap, it's just starting to happen there. So really not too bad. You can see around here on the heel, I haven't had any separation. I've seen some people talk about this, but these literally have 500 miles on them. So you can get a really good idea, even though they're a little bit beat up and worked over. They're fine for housework, but now that the foam is cracked here, probably from that final flex, because you can see where the flex point is there. That's where most of all my boots have always failed, is because of that, where the shank is, this nylon shank to give it rigidity, is where it causes to crack. Now you can see a boot that's 500 miles and 0 miles. This is really stiff, but over time, just walking, you can see that there's a lot of flexibility there and not nearly as much flexibility here. So that will break in over time. Now, the big downsides of these boots are, one, again, those outside lugs will tear off. It just seems to happen. Now, this is hundreds of miles, so I don't know if it's a time function or a mileage function or a little bit of both. But these boots are so waterproof that when I'm done hiking for the day, if it's really hot, I take out my Superfeet liners, and they are really wet because my feet sweat in them. So even though it's supposed to be like some sort of Gore-Tex synthesized something where your sweat's supposed to go out of your feet, it just doesn't happen. So if you get crazy sweaty feet, I would actually recommend the Merrell boots, knowing that you're going to get dust coming through and gub up your feet. I tend to just wear the wool socks. Feet get a little sweaty, but with a nice Smart wool socks, link below, I don't have a problem. So that's really the big downside, is that they become really smelly. And according to Keen and these real fancy high-end shoe places, you should use a little bit of baking soda, just sprinkle it in to absorb any of the salts and all that junk from your feet to suck it out. You can also use Gold Bond foot powder, link below, of course. And that's really it. So these boots, as you can see, they have served very well, 0 miles and 500 miles, pretty impressive. The only downside is because it's waterproof and gets smelly, so you always need to take out your liners at the end of the day, whether you go with the foam liner or a Superfeet, and that really will help you. I've been super impressed with these boots. They've lasted a really long time. This is my third, maybe fourth pair, I can't remember. So 1,500, if not 2,000 miles. Crazy amount of miles on these boots. And other than I've finally worn the outside, I could totally keep using these, but once I wear that outside, because of how I walk, it just kind of hurts my feet. So other than that, I would still keep cruising with these. I hope this video's been helpful to you. My name is Aaron Linsdau. I'm a polar explorer and professional adventurer. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll put a link below to these guys. Thank you very much for watching, and enjoy your hiking!